Hi, everyone. Rachel Gerber here, denominational minister for youth and young adults and the editor of The Gathering Place, which is an interactive online community for Anabaptist youth leaders to learn, be, and connect. And you can join the Gathering Place community at www.thegatheringplace.us. Now, this month we are talking about short-term missions and how to do it right. And on this podcast today, I'm really excited to have Marty Troyer with us, who is a pastor who's affectionately known as the Peace Pastor down in Houston, Texas. And he came out with a book here this last year called The Gospel Next Door, Following Jesus Right Where You Are. So, Marty, welcome to the Gathering Place podcast. So happy to have you today.
Thank you, Rachel. It's really good to be here. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Well, hey, congratulations on your book. Like I said, that's no small feat. It's wonderful. And what you have here is just, I think, such a gift to the church and to followers of Jesus who want to experience a fuller life in mission and justice in their local communities. And so congratulations on getting that out. And can you just tell us, maybe start from the beginning, tell us a little bit about how did this book sort of come to be? And how did this theme sort of emerge in your life that you wanted to write about it?
Yeah. If you're talking about faith formation and you really want to form your faith, go ahead and write a book, because that'll be the hardest thing you've ever done and incredibly faith forming. I'm kind of a bit of a takeaway that I didn't plan on is that this is the most communal thing I've ever done. As far as like listening to people well, learning from people, writing a book, I always thought was sitting in your kind of prayer closet or your place with your laptop and writing away. And there is that time, but it's also about other people. For the book for me came about with a real desire to encourage people to live the gifts that God has given them. And it's been a development of a journey for me when I started to blog as the Peace Pastor, which is a very kind of public platform for me. I started to realize pretty quick that there are people who are deeply interested in living a life that reflects Christ right where they actually are, like not setting aside a couple of hours a week to do the religious thing or even to do the kind of the service volunteerism thing, but to have that be integrated. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of capture that. And for me, just came back time and time again to the people I was meeting in Houston who were doing that well, and wanted to write their story for them and kind of capture that for the church as a way of saying, this is possible. It is possible to live an abundant life where you are using the gifts that God has given you for the sake of other people. And again, not kind of compartmentalizing life where there's religion and then there's work and then there's family. But I've learned through the lives of other people that you can do all those together. And the verse that's in my mind right now, because I just preached on it, is Ephesians 2:10, where it says we're created for good works. And realizing that if that's true, then it has to happen like right where we are, mm-hmm. whether that's being a mother, whether that's being a worker, whether that's being a neighbor.
So what does that actually mean? Like, how do you actually start about sort of living the gospel in an integrated way?
Yeah, good question. We're still figuring it out over on our end. I think especially as parents, my wife Hannah and I are always really intrigued by that. Like, how do we instill a life of service into our kids? And our children are 8, 5, and 3. So they're at a very kind of formative stage, and trying to just include them in our own lives and include them in our neighborhood, so that they start thinking about living Christianly outside the church walls. And we do service projects with them. My wife is really good about connecting them with other families. So on a very regular basis, they join a couple other families at a retirement center and do ministry there. And we're constantly trying to create creative ways for the kids to give and think about ministry and think about what they have to offer that Hannah and I don't. Like, children have something really special to offer people. So that's part of it. Like, for us as a family, like, we're really that's where I'm at. I mean, I'm at a season in life where, for me, when I think about life and faith, it's so centered in family. And so to try to do that well. But yeah, for a big part of my ministry, it's trying to help people connect God's call to their vocation and to the work that they do, which most of us spend at least as much time at work than we do at home or anywhere else. And so to connect the fact that we've been created in a particular way with the work that we do. And I think a lot of times people think about being Christian at work as like Bible studies and maybe as evangelism. Yeah. And that, I think, is very true. Like being a kind person at work is an incredible witness. But there's also a deeper layer to that. And for me, that's like the work itself that you do. Is it furthering God's kingdom? And how can you be energized by seeing yourself as part of this bigger movement? So yeah, right where you are, like following Jesus at work, following Christ through work. And that happens whether you're a teacher, business person, social worker, doctor. But the people I know and really care about have not connected those things. I don't think the church has connected those things for them at a meaningful enough level. So that's also part of it. It's kind of home life and then work life are two key areas that I've tried to connect.
Yeah. So what does it mean to be a Christian 7 days a week versus just compartmentalizing your life? Yeah. To just like, oh, we're doing the church thing on Sunday and then sort of entering into, the rest of the world. I mean, I think that's especially important for youth. Like for us as faith formation leaders, to help them, because they have a lot of challenges, a lot of things come their way throughout Monday through Saturday, right? And what does it mean, to empower them to live that gospel next door? And also, I think for youth leaders too, I mean, couched within this month, talking about short-term missions, we often think like, oh, to offer this amazing faith formation experience of service or whatever, like we need to be planning a trip to the border or Mexico or Guatemala or wherever that is. And not to say that that's wrong, but what also does it mean to just look immediately in your current context outside your church walls to what that looks like? So what do you have to say to those youth pastors maybe who are wanting more, I don't know, than just those, special trips that they take every once in a while, but to kind of live a more, like you said, integrated life, even within their youth group?
Yeah. As I was a youth pastor for about a decade before I became pastor here in Houston, which is a huge urban setting, and I was in small rural settings before. One of the things I would say is that there is incredible value in short-term missions that take us to other places. That's been really formative for me. Mm-hmm. And I look back on my progression of call, and a lot of it had to do with short-term missions in the city, which built for me a new sense of call. So I'm definitely not like setting that aside and saying it's all wrong. Yeah. And you're not either.
No.
But to be able to supplement that with a spiritual imagination about what is possible in our local settings. And some of that is just rooted in the idea that our community, our county, even our state, wherever we live, has needs. And I don't know that we would all, that any of us would miss that, but trying to really understand what those needs are and how a youth's gifts can connect with that. So one of the things that I've done in Houston numerous times with different groups, including youth groups, is a practice that I call spiritual imagination, which is using scripture to help you see your community. And in particular, helping to see your community as God might desire it to be. And I think this has worked well in rural settings as well as city settings. But in my setting, which is what I know the most, when I've worked with youth through a couple different programs, they've been deeply energized by seeing more clearly what shalom looks like on their street or in their immediate neighborhood. And to have that kind of gospel picture, right? The intent or the design, God's idea of human flourishing, really kind of illuminates what someone's gifts might be able to offer. And so one story or one group that I'm that I've worked with before is a nonprofit called New Spring. And New Spring was born out of the idea that our neighborhood, my particular neighborhood, needs more business opportunities, especially for immigrants. And the way that they went about doing that, as they started to express their spiritual imagination and see our neighborhood how God might, is by offering our youth and young adults an opportunity to do art and to train and teach and encourage young artists, and then helping them make the connections of being able to sell their art. And so the art is oftentimes has this kind of social component to it, as they're trying to understand their schools and their neighborhood and why things are the way they are. But then it's more than that, right? They're able to sell their art, which generates for them a job and possibly even an ongoing job. But then it gets their art out in the community, and it helps kind of sell this vision of this beautiful thing that could be, that is happening right in our midst. So that's one very kind of specific, and I just think is really beautiful. I love the way it's kind of layered that way to empower youth to use their imaginations to kind of catalyze the whole church.
Yeah.
And in our neighborhood, again, I live in a huge city, so my portion of that city, that's an exciting ministry that's happening here.
That's neat, because I think sometimes we don't trust our youth enough to that they have that spiritual imagination, I think sometimes we default to being like, we're the ones that have the wisdom, we're the ones that have the knowledge that we want to impart upon our youth, but to flip that upside down, and I think that's what grows and brings vitality to our congregations. And when we're able to empower our youth to say, I trust you, that God is speaking directly to you. What spiritual imagination is God putting on your heart? Yeah. That we can move into our communities. That's great.
Yeah. And I think you've captured it really well there. It's just honoring the youth and even the children enough to be able to say that what you have to offer is more indifferent than what I have to offer. And we really want to follow that. So empowering our youth to discern and create and be the genesis in their own way, in their own culture, really I think is empowering.
Yeah, and I think it also, when the Spirit is moving, especially within our children and youth, I think that just vitalizes and energizes the entire congregation in new ways. That's amazing. Yeah. Oh, great. Well, is there any other sort of words of wisdom or anything you want to say to our youth leaders or youth themselves about getting started with looking next door?
Mm-hmm. So I part of what I do in the book is I tell a lot of stories about myself. Mm-hmm. And one of the very way that I started off is by talking about spiritual growth that I experienced and kind of my journey from believing in Jesus to believing Jesus. Mm. And I would want to say for youth leaders and parents, pastors in particular, that's the process that our youth are on, is being formed. It's a journey. It's not something that happens in one decision or one baptism, but that it happens in community is what I want them to know, and that what they have to offer, whether they're 28 or 88, is something really important to our youth. And to recognize that journey is the journey of making disciples. It's the journey of helping people grasp the gospel of what it means to be part of God's kingdom. And I would just say, don't give up on that. Have the strength to stay involved in that, because it's life-giving and it's exciting. And that's the journey that our youth need to go on, is the journey of growth in Christ. And so the book here has some kind of practical ways of doing that, I think, with some youth groups, and not to shy away from the real classic core spiritual disciplines of teaching our kids how to pray, how to sit in silence, how to do Lectio Divina, how to fast, how to have silent retreats. And to do that because that's the way we're formed. 2,000 years of church history has said that's how we're formed. We're formed in community, and we're formed in our life with Christ. And there's power in that. So Richard Foster talks about how the spiritual disciplines are how we change our personality to become more like Christ. And that's part of that journey, right? Is being the community of grace and truth for our kids and our youth, but also being the ones who teach them how to be formed in the image of Christ. So I talk about that in my book, but the resources are, the things that you offer, Rachel, are incredible resources for our youth groups to help them see that what they're doing is not providing a program, but the path of formation.
Absolutely. That's what we all hope for. Absolutely.
That's what I'm still hoping for in my life.
Oh, well, Marty, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks so much for, gathering here today with me and the Gathering Place podcast, and to talk about, your book. And we wish you well in your ministry and in the local Houston community that you're a part of. So may God's mission and justice reign over all. So
thank you, Rachel.
To you, and we'll be in touch. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye.